Kia ora, hello, I'm Philip Duncan. Thanks for joining us for our Tuesday update recorded on the 10th of December. High pressure still remains just to our northeast and to the northwest as well. You can see it here in the brighter shading to the north of New Zealand mostly. The darker shading to the south, those big storms, those big lows down around the Southern Ocean. Up in the tropics, there is the usual amount of lower air pressure, but we're not seeing any storms just yet. But in a few days' time, around Rarotonga, we might be seeing a low pressure zone that could deepen into something a little more serious. But for New Zealand, it doesn't pose any serious risk. Not yet, anyway. So let's have a look and see what's going on. Here is lunchtime Wednesday, or just after it. Low pressure, big storms south of Tasmania. That's driving in windy spring-like westerlies for them, and that will be moving over towards the South Island and parts of New Zealand a bit later on this week. You can already see, though, the northwest wind blowing again on Wednesday. It's not overly strong, so that's why places like Hawke's Bay not quite as hot. At the moment, that wind isn't quite as big. But this is a subtropical breeze that's coming down, so it's still pretty mild and sometimes muggy, depends on where you are. And there are still some showers that are bubbling up. Most of the wet weather, though, on Wednesday is around the west coast, and just a few showers brushing around Southland. The winds aren't as strong on Wednesday, but they could still be a little bit brisk through central parts of New Zealand and around the Southern Alps. On Thursday, you guessed it, the winds pick up. Big storm just south of us again. More rain for the west coast, most of it from about the halfway mark southwards. I know for those of you that live on the west coast, you get sick of other people just saying it's raining on the west coast, considering it's a very large region. Mostly dry in the east, but those winds do pick up. West to northwest winds, again, getting blustery, possibly up to gale force, and a similar story around Wellington. Further northwards though, bit of convergence offshore, just sort of lining up with some wet weather that may just brush parts of the upper North Island, and it might spread a little further southwards later on towards Thursday evening. It's still a little bit patchy, not 100% locked in when you can see sort of borderline. Most of that wet weather is lying offshore, but it only takes a little bit of movement from the high off to the east here to push back a wee bit, and that wet weather moves further across the top of the North Island. So some more showers I'm sure will be welcome. So by the end of the week, that wet weather to the north slides further away offshore. We've got westerly winds or northwesterly winds blowing through, a bit of rain and showery weather on the west coast. Again, most of it is south of Greymouth. It's much drier from Greymouth northwards. There still is some wet weather, but it's not very much, at least not to begin with. It might move up a wee bit later on. And you do see a bit of spillover around Southland, Otago and Canterbury, but those rainfall totals won't be much, and maybe a couple of smaller showers coming in around Waitomo, Waikato and Taranaki. So the weekend, well, we've got a low pressure zone. That's the one I was talking about up near Rarotonga. Now this one could form into a tropical cyclone. It's not yet really on the horizon to be one, but when you see a low like that up in the tropics, it does have that potential. So wind and rain around there, but we've got this high pressure zone just to the south of it and to the north of New Zealand. So that's that invisible brick wall for now, keeping tropical weather well to our north. It is also encouraging that warmer or hotter airflow into New Zealand, so eastern parts are going to feel that heat again going into Friday and Saturday. More heavy rain, this time in southwestland and around Fiordland. And again, some spillover into Southland and Otago. Probably the most negative thing, those windy west to northwest winds could be back to gale force around Southland and Otago as we go through Saturday. And on Sunday, they ease again, those winds. This is why we're calling it a spring-like pattern. I know some of you are saying it's 30 degrees, it's too hot for spring. Spring can get up to 30 degrees. It's more the windy weather and the storms south of us. That's why I'm calling it a spring-like pattern. Sure, it's bringing summer heat for some of you, but the reason you're getting that heat is because it's windy for the most part, helping to produce that. So this weekend, a few showers around the South Island, a couple of them still up around the far north. Nothing too big in there just yet. And that low up in the tropics doesn't look very strong. The high pressure zone that's south of it pushing back against it. And so it's really in not favourable conditions to stay as a storm. And so as we go through into the start of next week, that low sinks further towards New Zealand, but at the same time it's weakening. It is possible it could sort of just drift its way down towards us later next week. But at this stage, it is not posing any kind of threat to the New Zealand area, but it's worth keeping an eye on because the high out to the east is sort of directing it a wee bit towards us. So it's just worth keeping an eye on. But around New Zealand on Monday, you're seeing thunderstorms and heavy showers developing for some inland areas. And further to the north, it is a humid north to northeasterly wind coming in with some rain or showers or drizzle patches. And at the other end of the country, Southland, you'll be very pleased to know, there's a big high pressure zone moving in around you. But we've got lows to the north of New Zealand, another one here north of the far north between New Zealand and New Caledonia. There's low pressure or a trough forming there. A likely tropical cyclone out around Western Australia, around the Pilbara and the Kimberley. And then you've also got severe gales maybe around Victoria and Tasmania due to these big storms in the Southern Ocean. So nothing about this weather map says settled, calm, nothing to see here kind of weather. There's a lot going on, and yet at the same time, not a lot of drama, not just yet anyway. That is all from me for today. See you again tomorrow, Wednesday with our next update. We'll catch you then.